Illyria by C.A. Wynn. It's funny how things change, he thought. From this vantage point, he could see the small moon getting larger on their approach. It was a seat he couldn't have afforded back when he lived here. Youth and poverty are not the same thing, but they are often joined at the hip. Nuolan Archyn had left both of them behind on this satellite of Uranus. It was a place that never made sense to him. He'd first arrived by choice of his parents. He couldn't exclusively blame it on them. Escaping poverty and disorder often limited opportunities. To him, Earth and Mars were preferable. If their only options had been moons, he would have chosen Ganymede or Titan. Hell, even Luna would have been more appealing. All of those options were better than Titania. A warning light illuminated above the observation window. Being able to afford the seat didn't change the laws of physics. Nuolan would have to return to his berth below if he wanted to be safe during the landing. Finishing off the remains of his drink, he secured the bulb in one of the compartments of his seat. The restraints pulled at him before he released them, reminding him there was no gravity. He pushed off, propelling himself to the ladder. "Have a safe landing," bid the AI as Nuolan left the lounge. Behind him, he could hear the automated systems cleaning up. In his berth, Nuolan secured his few personal items. Strapped in, he could watch the landing through his monitor. The limited space of his berth was confining, bringing back a touch of claustrophobia. He closed his eyes against the uneasiness and listened to the activity of the flight crew. If he imagined being with them, he might distract himself. As he listened, they described the approach to the crater, Ursula. With their words, a vision grew in his mind. He pictured the attitude of the ship, the preparation of the landing pad. The exercise had the desired effect, calming him. The docking procedure was quick. It took no time for Nuolan to exit the ship. That's when he noticed something unexpected. The depot looked just as he remembered it. In fact, it hardly seemed changed at all. Knowing this was impossible, he dismissed the thought. Things are perpetually evolving, even on a remote moon like Titania. "Welcome home, Mr. Archyn." The young steward extended his hand. "Shall I have your bag sent ahead, sir?" Nuolan accepted the young man's hand, shook it vigorously, and smiled. "Please," he said. The steward studied his tablet. "I apologize, Mr. Archyn. I don't have your reservations in my system. Have you made arrangements?" Nuolan pulled up his own tablet and offered it to the steward. "Yes, as you can see, I reserved a room at the Ophelia." As he glanced between tablets, the steward's face soured. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm not familiar with the Hotel Ophelia." "How confusing," said Nuolan. "I'm sure I booked a room there." "Is it new?" asked the steward. Nuolan wrinkled his face. "I wouldn't know. I haven't been here in a very long time. It had the best rating I could find." "Would you like me to ask around?" the steward asked. "No, I'll cancel that reservation," said Nuolan. "Where do you recommend?" "I suggest the Illyria, sir," said the steward. "First rate. I can book a room for you without delay." "The Illyria?" asked Nuolan. "I didn't realize it was still open." "That will be fine, thank you." Nuolan had generated his blockchain payment. When the transaction was complete, the steward addressed him again. "Will you be going to your room straight away, sir?" "No, I think I'll take some time to look around, maybe reminisce," said Nuolan. Leaving the depot, Nuolan entered Herschel Station. He didn't correct the steward's reference to home. Some of his youth indeed was spent here, but he'd never been fond of the place. It was a way station, a stepping stone, a passage to other things. Still, he had some positive memories, so calling it home was not offensive. The exit from the depot opened to a causeway. To Nuolan's right was the part of the station he considered uptown. Once again, he'd expected to see the causeway changed, at least widened. Finding this not to be the case, he looked back toward the depot. It too appeared remarkably unchanged. It was a feeling he found difficult to shake. The steward who greeted him was a young man. Surely this person hadn't been born when Nuolan last left this moon. The android seemed newer as well, or was he assuming that? Something was indeed off. Was his overactive imagination playing tricks on him? If anything was different, it was him. He was about 40 years removed from this place. Even if everything were the same, decades of knowledge and experience had come with him. He also brought a weak back and uncertain eyesight. Given the circumstances, he should add a failing memory to that list. The causeway led Nuolan to a commercial sector. The existing storefronts seemed eerily familiar. A small bakery smelled the way he remembered it. The sounds of canned music were just as he recalled. A familiar shop carried the same drones he'd pined for in his youth. Titania was a relic of humanity's earliest settlements. Signs of age were to be expected, complete with disuse and decay. What was missing was any modernization. Here and there he expected technological upgrades and expansion. Instead, he felt thrust back in time. The familiarity was at once comforting and unsettling. A young boy raced past, roughly brushing him in the process. Nuolan cursed the child's parents as he stumbled forward. A hand grabbed him firmly by the elbow. As he steadied himself, he turned to find a middle-aged man smiling. "Did you need some help?" Nuolan nodded his thanks. Children running around in the middle of the day. "I've seen that one," said the stranger. "He doesn't pay much attention to where he's going." That sounds familiar, thought Nuolan. Was it the voice? The man's manner? The accent? He couldn't place where he'd heard it. Many failed to raise their children properly, Nuolan said. The man nodded. "I have said this often." Nuolan could hardly contain his excitement as the man's familiarity grew. "Do I know you?" The man grinned broadly as he looked Nuolan up and down. His smile faded into a frown. "No, sir, I don't think so. I'm from around here, but you don't look like you are." "Well, maybe once," said Nuolan. "Some time ago, I guess." The man extended his hand. "Dulus is my name." Nuolan's eyes betrayed his shock. He knew this man. 40 or so years removed, he was speaking with his own father. "Nuolan Archyn?" "Yes. Do I know you after all?" Dulus asked. Nuolan had no idea what to say next. He forced a smile, still firmly gripping the man's hand. He spoke the first words that came to mind. "I've heard of you. Unique name." Dulus smiled more broadly. "Heard of me? From Earth, perhaps?" Yes, Earth. Nuolan's mind raced. How could he have heard of his own father? What trail had his parents left that led them here? He couldn't remember many details. What did they call it? "From the old country," he said. "Oh my, very far back," said Dulus. "Thank you for thinking of me. What an extraordinary event meeting you here." Extraordinary was one of many words dancing around in Nuolan's mind at that moment. Unbelievable seemed more apt. He could offer nothing but a blank stare. When the man's hand slipped out of his, he began to recover from his reverie. "And your name, sir?" Dulus asked. "Would I know you? You are successful, I see. I must have heard of you." "I don't believe so. My success is more recent." Nuolan hesitated. He knew better than to reveal his identity. If this were his father, then his own name would raise a red flag. "I'm from the Keskill family. Kinchiri Keskill." These were names he'd heard before, relics from his past, boys he'd met somewhere along the way. He couldn't remember if his father had known either of them. "My son knows a Keskill," Dulus said. "Any relation to you?" "I'm not aware of any out this far," said Nuolan, "but it might be worth looking into." "Well, Mr. Keskill," said Dulus, "please be welcome here on Titania. My wife and I will open our doors to you." "There's no need," said Nuolan. "Oh, not the accommodations you are accustomed to, I'm sure," Dulus laughed. "But we are practically family, after all. From the old country." "Indeed," Nuolan bowed. I look forward to it." Duelist pulled out his communication pad and typed something on it. Nuolan recognized the device, its corner nicked by being dropped too often. He would have been shocked to see it before. Now, fewer things were surprising him. Nuolan pulled out his own tablet and recorded his father's contact information, setting a time to visit his family. Nuolan had spent 7 years with his family on this moon. He became a teenager in the corridors of Herschel Station. Nearing his 20th birthday, he said goodbye to the place. Between those points, his father was the man he had just met. This version of the man was no older than 40. Nuolan himself neared 60. How both of these could be true was anyone's guess. The Illyria promenade overlooked the surface of Titania. Uranus and its other moons were ever present in the background. These dancing celestial bodies would have remained a constant here. The same could not be said about a human settlement untouched by time. This hotel had occupied his dreams as a young man. In many ways, it helped shape him into the person he became. The doors of the place had been closed to people like him. Entry required wealth or prestige, neither of which young Nuolan possessed. Envy spurred him to make more of himself. 40 years removed, this was something he'd forgotten. Many things that hadn't changed wouldn't change. The brandy in his hand was an example. Sitting on his tongue, it had the same familiar bite. Taste and smell, the physical forces, the hum of the station. There was some reason to expect all of these to remain constant. How then had time changed? Now sitting in what appeared to be his past, he had no explanation for it. There were too many questions to ask, the obvious being how and why. Neither of them would have a simple answer. Nuolan thought about all the things that might have led to what he was experiencing. To this point, humanity had no power over time. If the ship had gone through a wormhole, he was not aware of it. Even if it had, could that bring him to the past? Not being a scientist, such questions were never going to be easy for him to answer. He knew long-distance space travel relied on technology with a time component, but that didn't mean time travel. Besides, he'd used the technology his whole life without this happening. What was different this time? What had changed? Maybe the brandy was a mistake after all. Asking complex questions was better done with his wits about him. Still, he didn't know how else to deal with the enormity of what sat before him. The elixir had also unlocked memories. Perhaps there was something in them. A clue? The questions of how and why ultimately had fleeting appeal. Nuolan's mind drifted into the conversations he wanted to have with his parents and with his younger self. He'd see his mother again and the old flat where they lived. His sister would be there, and of course young Nuolan. What would he say? What should he say? What mistakes have I made, he wondered, the brandy warm in his mouth. What can I warn myself about? Nuolan finished off his drink and returned to the hotel restaurant. There he found a seat at the bar and requested another glass. He would be meeting the family of Nuolan Archyn. His nerves required a soft landing. Nuolan looked around and discovered that he was almost alone in the lounge. It was too early to be drinking, even for him. 2 other men occupied distant corners of the room. One was looking his way. Nuolan nodded, lifting his glass. When he turned back, Nuolan found someone else standing at the other end of the bar. She was whispering to the android. As the mechanical man turned to fill her order, the woman looked around, her eyes falling on Nuolan. "This seat isn't taken, is it?" she asked. He waved the woman over, pointing at the seat beside him. "Neither is this one." It was not the first time he'd met a woman this way. She was tall and rounded, her dark skin offset by the white border of her black dress. As she approached, Nuolan guessed her to be slightly younger than he was. The lines on her face spoke of many nights in places like this. Her perfume preceded her, having been too eagerly applied. "I realize we've never met," she said, setting her purse on the counter. "I hope it's not a bother, but I don't like to drink alone." "I've made that mistake many times," said Nuolan. "Talking to strangers?" she asked. "Drinking alone," he said. She extended her hand and smiled. Adriana. He hesitated. Was he Nuolan Archyn, or should he become the man he'd introduced to his father? Kinchiri, he said. Kinchiri? Adriana repeated. Interesting. Where does it come from? My parents? He asked. No, I mean, is it a family name? She asked. He considered his options. My father's father's father, he said, wondering if he'd remembered that. She might ask again. And where was he from? She asked. My father still calls it the old country, Nuolan said. On Earth, it was Northern Asia, Siberia. I'm familiar. Never been there. Cold, right? So your family was born to travel in space. She laughed a little too hard. There was a loneliness in her laugh, a desperation. And Adriana, he asked, is that a family name? Shakespeare, she said. Adriana Shakespeare? He asked. No, the playwright, she said. My mother loved his plays. Little did she know I'd become her comedy of errors. She erupted again. It was a cackle that drew too much attention to her. Comedy of errors? He asked. That's the play, she said. My name comes from it. I've never seen any of his plays, Nuolan said. You're not missing much, she said. I don't think he'll ever be successful. Another laugh. So tell me, Adriana, what brings you to this place? He asked. She scanned the room, an odd look on her face. Isn't it obvious? Shakespeare? Titania? Illyria? Nuolan raised his eyebrows. He glanced around as though looking for someone to give him the answer. No, I'm afraid it's not obvious, he finally said. Well, I guess if you don't know Shakespeare, then you don't get it, she said. This place is called Illyria. It's on the moon Titania. Both of them are names from Shakespeare. She slapped the bar. Like Adriana! I just figured Titania was Greek or Latin or something. The brandy had softened his brain. Oh, I'm sure it's one of those, she said. But all of these moons have names from Shakespeare. Surely you've heard of Oberon. The moon? He asked. Yes, the moon, she said. But the character, Oberon. A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a classic. Nuolan shook his head. No, sorry. Anyway, that's why I'm here. Been wanting to visit because of the names. Not sure what else would bring me to the ass end of nowhere. She tilted her head back to empty her drink. When she'd finished it, she stared at him over the top of the glass. What brings you out this way? It's not the culture. She signaled for another drink. No, not the culture, he said. I used to live here when I was younger. Here in Illyria? She asked. He looked around and laughed. No, my family couldn't afford a place like this. Adriana leaned toward him, partly shielding her mouth with her hand. It's a little overpriced, if you ask me. He offered a conspiratorial smile. I agree. Adriana's drink arrived quickly. She backed away from the bar and grabbed it, swirling the liquid around in the glass. So, old home week. Seen anybody you know? He wasn't sure how he should answer that. The brandy was telling him to let loose, but discretion had not yet abandoned him. Knowing who he had met made any answer complicated. I was just thinking about that before you got here. What if you could go back to a place and see yourself, your younger self? What would you do? Adriana's eyes grew wide. Don't get me started on that. What wouldn't I do? I'd tell myself everything, all the mistakes, all the missed opportunities. Would you? He asked. Of course. Who wouldn't? I mean, getting a second chance to do it better, she said. There are so many things I'd change. Like what? He asked. Give me an example. Adriana's eyes looked from side to side. Oh, like my first husband. I'd never marry that louse. Her voice grew too loud. Nuolan scanned the room again. No one else seemed to notice or mind. Of course, his money is the only reason I can travel. Another guffaw followed. Lifting her glass, she tapped it against his. He was successful, like you. That's just my point, said Nuolan. Could I have been more successful? What if I could tell myself all the secrets? You know, if I knew then what I know now sort of thing. He heard the last words begin to slur together, telling him he should stop with the brandy. She sipped her drink, then placed it on the bar. Her face lit up with excitement. I know, like what companies to invest in. Then you could have more mono. He nodded. More mono, more days sitting on the promenade of the Illyria, watching Uranus spin. He raised his glass in salute, then down what remained. Looking to the android behind the bar, he put up 2 fingers. Adriana lifted her glass. Here's to watching Uranus spin. They fell silent. Nuolan's focus was on the planet, its shades of blue, and the several moons he could see. When his drink arrived, it startled him. He looked to find Adriana staring at Uranus. He hesitated to interrupt her. Would you have listened? He asked. She turned, tilting her head. Listened? When you were young, he said, if your older self told you all these things, would you have listened? Oh, of course, she said. Wouldn't you? He took a drink, allowing the brandy to sit on his tongue. As it slipped down his throat, he considered the question. Sure, I suppose so. Of course you would, she said. Who wouldn't listen to their own advice? Nuolan couldn't tell if she was convinced of that. He certainly wasn't. As a young man, he was headstrong, defiant, and self-assured. He often wondered how he'd ever survived. Do you think it's possible? Going back in time? Adriana lifted her glass. No doubt about it. Happens all the time. He woke to find the lights out. A blanket rolled up around him. The hum of the station competed with a woman's soft snore. Shaking his head to clear it, he remembered the name Illyria. It was the place he'd dreamed about in his youth. The window in the room looked out on a sky of stars. Uranus was somewhere out of sight. He was certain he'd rented a room with a better view. He pressed his hand to his forehead and lifted himself from the couch. Why am I on the couch? He wondered. He remembered stumbling down the hall. They'd fallen several times. What is her name? Ariana? No, something like that. Adriana? She had been far too loud. He was sure the hotel would send someone. She was laughing, and he kept shushing her until he joined in. This isn't my room, he realized. He groped around for his tablet. It wasn't within reach. When he gave up, he turned on the nearest light. A yellowish glow washed over everything. On a counter across from him, he spotted a tablet. He tried to stand and get it. The room began to swim, forcing him back roughly on the couch. Adriana laughed somewhere in the room. His eyes were too foggy to make out where. You really should just lie down, she said with a chortle that quickly faded. He couldn't keep his eyes open. The pain was too great. What time is it? It's time to sleep it off, she said. He tried again to reach his tablet, standing uncertainly. I have to see my father. Your father? She asked. You said you didn't know anybody here. When he got his hands on the tablet, it wasn't his. He pushed it aside and scanned the table. Losing his balance, he fell back on the couch. He's here. I met him. He's a young man now. He said I could visit them. How can your father be a young man? She asked. The room continued to spin. Nuolan decided to take action. If not, he would be sick. With his hands tight over his eyes, he rolled over on his side. Are you okay? Adriana called. The room is spinning, he said. No, it's not. Nuolan could hear her feet fall heavily on the floor. Oh, wait, it is. She fell onto the bed with a thud. He pictured the scene in his mind, his eyes useless to him. He tried again, but couldn't get up. Did you see my tablet? Maybe I could call him. Is it at the bar? She asked. Nuolan tried to remember. They'd been at the bar for a long time. A crowd had begun to gather. They didn't mingle, sticking together. Her guffaw was too loud. He kept ordering drinks anyway. What was I thinking? He asked aloud. About your father? she asked. I just kept buying drinks, he said. She started to snicker again. It wasn't long before she stopped with a whimper. What's the matter? He asked. Now my head hurts, she said. Why did you keep buying drinks? It's what I always do, he said. Nuolan woke again. His head still hurt. He shielded his eyes and tried to raise himself from the couch. The best he could do was sit up. Even that little effort tired him. He wasn't young anymore. Through half-open eyes, he searched the room, finally spotting his tablet. The nicked corner of it protruded from beneath the bed. He leaned forward and retrieved it, then roughly sat back into the seat. According to the tablet, brunch was underway in the lobby. Not only had night slipped by, but so had the morning. He called the number he'd saved, still hoping to connect with his father again. The effort failed. The number did not appear valid. Who are you calling? It was a woman's voice. It took him a moment to remember who she was. Adriana's face poked out from beneath the blankets. One of her eyes was closed behind her tousled hair. I told you I'm calling my father, he said. I met him last night. He was young again. Adriana's laugh was weak. She coughed as it ended. He can't be young again. Nuolan tried to call once more, but got the same response. This number he gave me isn't working. That's 'cause he couldn't give it to you, she said. He's dead. Nuolan closed his eyes again, leaning his head back on the couch. How did I talk to him then? I don't know, she said. When did you start drinking? He thought back to the flight in from Ganymede. He'd had a few drinks to calm himself on the approach. Only a few, though. 3 or 4 at most. Maybe 5. End of Illyria by C.A.Wynn.